Hello, I'm back. And I think I was just finishing the third movement, which I wanted to say ends in almost exactly the same way that it opens. So it really is just sort of like a march that comes from the distance and develops and builds and then fades away. And then the last movement, which is marked with great wildness, begins in just that way. I would need 25 fingers to try to play what Mahler has going in the opening of this movement. It's very dramatic, and yet there are some thematic connections with what he gives and connections between the last movement and the first movement as well. A great deal going on, and the structure of this last movement is also really good. After this very wild opening, which has some really passionate sections for the strings, Mahler brings back that opening music from the beginning of the symphony, and it seems very similar. And we're sort of left there a bit adrift, holding, not sure what's going to happen. And in a move that reminds me a lot of what Tchaikovsky does in his Fourth Symphony last movement, he has the violas start something that then builds and builds. Out of the blue, we're just holding here, and we hear very dramatic. A bit more deliberate. It's becoming something. And this theme starts to build, and he has a great way of developing the last movement. He does show his hand earlier in the symphony as to what the finale is going to sound like. And it can be a little confusing for listeners when they hear what sounds like, oh, this must be the end, but then really there are about 8 more minutes of the symphony still to go, including the development that I was just playing for you. But by the time we get to the end, it is so triumphant. And he writes for all the horns and brass. He even instructs the horns that they should stand up together, and the trombones. Incredibly triumphant conclusion. The subtitle of the symphony is The Titan, and the Titan in question is actually Mahler himself. So from the beginning, he is addressing some of the struggles of his life, some of the things he loves, including nature, and what I think he hopes will be his ultimate triumph as an artist. There was this one movement called Blumine, which is blooms or blooming flowers, that had a beautiful lyrical trumpet solo that he ultimately took out of the symphony, and nowadays is often just played as a separate orchestral work. It was originally written for part of some incidental music for a dramatic poem, but he took it out after, I think, the 4th performance. And what's interesting is he gave it to a woman that he had tutored at the Vienna Conservatory, and she gave it to her son. He sold it to a certain James Osborne from Yale, or actually who donated it to Yale University, and it was rediscovered in the Yale University Library in 1966. It was not played for the first time in the 20th century until Benjamin Britten led it then after 1966. So sort of an interesting provenance. We never know what's in our libraries, kind of an exciting thing. I just wanted to say about Mahler's legacy. Of course, his music has become sort of the top of the food chain of the orchestral repertoire. It's what the great orchestras all really aspire to play. It's certainly one of the big parts of the Chicago Symphony's repertoire and most of the major orchestras. His music was banned in Germany during the Nazi regime because of his Jewish background. But then in 1961, which was exactly 50 years after his death, all of it became available and out of copyright, and it was much more readily available to orchestras and easier to get to. And between that and Bernstein and Walter's championing of it, Mahler's music entered the repertoire. I would like to also share with you a preview of next year's season. Some of you may already heard me speak about this a couple of weeks ago at a lovely event at the Champaign Library. But since you've come today, let me just tell you that we will have more Mahler next season. Our symphony will be performing the 5th Symphony of Gustav Mahler as part of our opening concert. And the Fifth Symphony is an even larger work for larger forces. It's a very dramatic work, and I look forward to talking to you about it at an OLLI presentation next October. We will be joined for this concert by a fantastic young artist. Her name is Amanda Majeski. Amanda is a soprano who has been singing all over the world, including at the Metropolitan Opera. She just appeared a couple weeks ago there in Mozart's Così fan tutte. And Amanda will be performing the lovely four last songs of Richard Strauss, which come from the end of Strauss's life. They are also autobiographical in that he's reflecting on his artistic life. There are quotes from Mein Heldenleben and his music, and also references to himself and his wife, Pauline, sort of going off into the sunset. Just incredibly sumptuous orchestrations, and Amanda will have a really perfect voice for this. She has a voice that's been particularly acclaimed for her singing of Strauss. So that'll be our October concert, and I'm really excited about the possibility of presenting Mahler Symphony No. 5 there. Our holiday concert is called Holiday Glory. We're going to be joined by the University of Illinois Oratorio Society in Vivaldi's Gloria, and the lovely and talented Josephine Stoplenberg will be back as soprano soloist with Kate Tombaugh. Both Josephine and Kate sang last year, and they'll be singing a variety of pieces from Vivaldi to some wonderful new arrangements that have not been heard in our holiday concerts before, including a sort of ethereal, beautiful arrangement of Angels We Have Heard on High, and a fun piece called The Day After Christmas, which is a bit of a takeoff on what we do after Christmas, a la Gilbert and Sullivan. And other favorites such as In Dulce Jubilo and the Bell Carol, and of course the Christmas Carol Sing-Along and the Hallelujah Chorus. It's going to be a really fun program that features as well the Central Illinois Children's Chorus. We have an entire season called Our World, Our Music. All of the programs relate to this theme. And our January program is called All the World's a Stage. And the central solo work on this concert is Stacy Garrop's new viola concerto called Krakatoa. That's, of course, the Indonesian volcano, and the piece was premiered in Indonesia a few months ago. And this will be the U.S. premiere of this work for solo viola, strings, and percussion. Our soloist will be Carol Cook, who is principal violist of Lyric Opera in Chicago, and a really amazing violist. She's from Scotland originally, a fan of Stacy's music, and very excited to be doing this U.S. premiere. So given that this concerto is about volcanoes, I like the challenge of doing volcano-related programming. Believe it or not, I've done it several times in the past. And so I chose a first half of the Barber of Seville Overture by Rossini, always a favorite, a very bubbly work, and Schubert's Symphony No. 5 in B flat, which is just a gorgeous piece. And both these works date from the year 1816, which happens to be a year referred to as the year without a summer. That's because in 1815, another huge Indonesian volcano, Mount Tambora, erupted and put so much ash into the atmosphere that the entire next year didn't manage to get very hot temperatures all around the world, thus being called the year without a summer. So both those works come from that year. And then we will conclude that program with the delightful Pulcinella suite by Igor Stravinsky. Pulcinella, of course, is one of the characters in the Commedia dell'arte tradition. And the Pulcinella suite is really like a little concerto for orchestra. So many of the instruments, from oboe to trombone to trumpet, violin, get solos in this really delightful neoclassical piece. We have a very special event coming up next March 9th, when we will give, I think, the premiere of the full intact version of Stacy Garrop's oratorio called Terra Nostra. This is a very thoughtful, meaningful, moving piece about our planet, as the title would suggest. It's in 3 sections. I think it would be great if Stacy shared a word with you all about Terra Nostra. We have a marvelous vocal quartet lined up: Sarah Gartshore, soprano; Meg Bregel, who I don't believe has sung in Champaign before, but she's a terrific artist; Stephen Soff, another terrific artist, tenor; and David Govertson. So a great solo quartet joined again by the University of Illinois Oratorio Society in this very moving, full concert oratorio of Terra Nostra. Very excited to be doing that piece together. And then our final concert of the year will be fun and brilliant for the orchestra. It's the setting of our world, but in a more celestial sense. We start with the planets of Gustav Holst, a tremendous work for the full symphony orchestra. You know, it's a piece that's been frequently copied by lots of film composers in particular, but Holst's original ideas are breathtaking. And of course, he had 7 planets to work with at the time, and Pluto hadn't come into the picture, and of course now it's out of the picture again, poor little Pluto. But that will contrast all of this other music that speaks about our own planet, Earth. And then we will finish our season with none other than the Star Wars Suite by John Williams, a really fun and powerful way to end our season. So lots to look forward to. I'm going to try to have some other perspectives shared with you about the playing of Mahler's music. And I want to thank Sun and Stacy and also Jerry for helping pull together the rest of today's presentation. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night at our season-ending concert, The Music of Titans.